The next call is a split call. Jane Logie, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to take a short call on the Child Protection, Child Sex Offender Register Bill. The Green Party is supporting this bill to Select Committee so that we can hear evidence from a range of experts on this issue. We do, of course, have child welfare at the heart of our concern generally, and specifically have a long history in this House of trying to improve our system response to sexual violence and keep our children safe. So we do have an interest in the identified intent of this bill. We do, however, as it stands, as it is written at the moment, have significant concerns. And I would also like to just raise my sense of bemusement that this has been referred to the Social Services Select Committee. Of course, as a committee last term, we heard the inquiry into social services for sexual violence and considered some of those issues, and certainly heard from providers who are providing treatment for harmful sexual behaviours and sexual offending. So we have some history of looking at sexual violence issues, but not at all the justice response to those issues. And this bill gives powers primarily to police and corrections who will have direct access to this register, and we have not considered those issues. And I would like to note that actually the evidence we heard from those providing services to harmful sexual people engaging in harmful sexual behaviours were very sceptical of the value of registers and warned us against them, in fact, and did note that still they have concern that people referring themselves for treatment for these behaviours or thought patterns that may lead them to worrying that they may offend actually are still finding it very difficult to get into courses to be able to address those behaviours in themselves or attitudes. So the thought that we are, and the government is prioritising a register that we are yet to be sure there's evidence will make a difference over the provision of those services that we know have a very high success rate seems to me to be less than constructive, particularly when we know that the conviction rate for sexual violence in this country is 1%. So this is dealing with a tiny, tiny percentage of people who are offending against children in this country. And it's focusing $150 million of precious resource towards a scheme that actually we don't have international evidence that can assure us is going to be effective, targeted towards this tiny, tiny percentage of people out of a much larger group, when we could actually be putting that money into establishing a really solid system of prevention and early intervention in our communities. Now, to me, my instinct is, and from listening to people working in the sector, our resources would be better focused on prevention and early intervention rather than this register that does raise quite a few concerns around the Bill of Rights. And I do also just want to point out one of the the strange, possibly unintended consequences that might arise from this, and that we do want to hear evidence on, is that it may send a message that sex offending is one of those crimes that you can't rehabilitate, that we need to just keep an eye on these people. And that is simply not true. There is absolutely a really, really high rate of behaviour change. It's under 5%, I think, of people who have offended, who after treatment are still a risk. And we actually have a parole amendment bill that allows for extended supervision orders to be renewed for that group of people. We don't want to create the impression that may make it harder for people to disclose if they think somebody's never going to change.
I call